Why the East African Federation might never succeed. Burundi, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda are the 7 sovereign members of the East African Community in the African Great Lakes region that make up the proposed political union known as the East African Federation. The concept of this federation has been around since the early 60s, but for a variety of reasons, it has not yet materialized. And why might it just not work out? Before we delve deeper into this subject, kindly click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you won't miss out on more amazing content like this. Let's get started without further ado. A committee was established to start the process of creating a regional constitution in September 2018. The Confederation's draft constitution was supposed to be written by the end of 2021 and put into effect by 2023, but it's likely that this deadline won't be met. Although the East African Federation has not yet been created, many steps have been taken in the direction of this ultimate objective. For the eventual union of these countries, institutions and governing bodies already exist, with representatives from all the related countries cooperating towards this common objective. The 7 countries that make up the East African community are hampered by political corruption, tyrannical states, and linguistic and ethnic incompatibilities. The area hopes to get past these obstacles so that it can benefit economically from a union that would serve this huge and expanding population. The East African Federation, EAF, which would replace India as the 7th largest country in the world, would have a land area of 1,858,162 square miles. From the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, it would cross the entire continent. By March 2022, it would have a population of 312,362,653, making it the 4th most populous country in the world and the most populous country in Africa. Its population would be second only to China, India, and the United States in size, surpassing that of Russia, Japan, Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia. It has been suggested that Swahili become the universal language. By both city limits and metropolitan area, Kinshasa would be the most populous city in the proposed federation, followed by Nairobi in the metropolitan area and Dar es Salaam within city limits. Arusha, the current East African Community headquarters and a city in Tanzania close to the Kenyan border, is the proposed capital. At present, 22% of the people residing in these territories live in cities. The East African shilling, which is expected to be the common currency of 5 of the 7 member countries by 2023, is the proposed currency for the Union. It would rank as the 34th largest market in the world and the 4th largest in Africa, after Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa, based on an estimated GDP, PPP, of $240 billion. The East African Federation ranks 156 in the world according to the estimated GDP, PPP, per capita of $800. Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of Kenya, is in charge of organizing the summit for the East African communities. The current acting lead council chairperson is Betty Maina, a cabinet member for former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who serves as the Secretary for Industrialization, Trade, and Enterprise Development. After years of serving on the East African Business Council, Dr. Peter Matuko Mathuki was appointed as the EAC's acting Secretary General on April 25, 2021. Timeline. The political leaders of Kenya, Tanganyika, Uganda, and Zanzibar became interested in forming a federation in the early 60s, around the time those countries gained independence from the United Kingdom. In order for all of the East African nations to become independent as a federation, Julius Nyerere even proposed in 1960 to put off Tanganyika's impending independence, due in 1961. Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere and Ugandan Prime Minister Milton Obote met with Kenyan Prime Minister Jomo Kenyatta in Nairobi in June 1963. They agreed that this would be done by the end of the year and discussed the possibility of unifying their 3 countries, plus Zanzibar, into a single East African Federation. Following that, discussions on the preparation for such a union were initiated. In secret, Kenyatta was less enthusiastic about the plan, and by 1964, the federation had not materialized. Kenyatta disapproved of a backbenchers' resolution in May 1964 that demanded a quicker federation. He claimed in the open that talk of a federation had always been a ploy to quicken Kenya's separation from Britain, but Nyerere refuted the veracity of this assertion. Due to domestic political pressures and the semi-autonomous kingdom of Buganda's opposition to joining an East African federation as a part of Uganda, but rather as a unit in its own right, Obote came out against one at the same time and supported Pan-African unity. The prospects for a larger East African federation had vanished by the end of 1964, despite the fact that Tanzania was eventually formed when Tanganyika and Zanzibar united in April 1964. It is believed that even after these countries attained decolonization, colonial powers in Kenya and the other countries that joined the federation were motivated to oppose the federation. For instance, when the federation first failed in 1965, Britain demanded that Kenya protect every aspect of the settler economy from its neighbors, those attempting to conjoin with Kenya for the federation. As one of many reasons the federation was unable to organize in the 60s, this presented a barrier to entry for Kenya. 2010's to 2020's proposal through the East African Community, a federation of the current East African Community into a single state, started to be discussed in the early 2010s, with early predictions placing the federation's founding in 2013. The EAC established its own regional common market in 2010, with the aim of creating a common currency by 2013 and a full political federation by 2015. South Sudan joined the EAC in September 2016 after being granted membership in March 2016. It would join the East African Federation as its sixth member. It is unknown how South Sudan's potential membership in the EAC will affect the timing or scope of the country's federation, but given the infrastructure issues that have persisted in the new nation since South Sudanese President Salva Kiir Mayardit cut off oil trade with Sudan, the South has made the decision to invest in building pipelines that bypass Sudan's, which it had been using up until that point. Both to the southeast and the Kenyan coast, these new pipelines would run through Ethiopia and connect to the ports of Djibouti. These partnerships might make it more likely that South Sudan will eventually join the East African Federation. The leaders of Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, and Burundi started a meeting in Kampala on October 14, 2013, with the intention of drafting a constitution for the East African Federation. By December 2014, however, efforts to create a complete political federation had been postponed until 2016 or later. The Union, according to Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, is the #1 target that we should aim at as of February 2016. The EAC Council of Ministers decided to establish an East African Confederation before the East African Federation in November 2016. A committee of regional constitutional experts and writers was established in September 2018 to start the process of drafting a regional constitution. A confederation constitution would be written by the end of 2021. The committee, which was chaired by retired Ugandan Chief Justice Benjamin Odoki, announced at a 5-day consultation meeting held in Burundi from January 14 to 18, 2020. The East African Confederation would be created by 2023 after the 6 EEC states have had a year to consult on the draft and approve it. At upcoming meetings, the detailed roadmap toward a complete political federation will be covered. Yoweri Museveni reiterated in an address to the nation in April 2020 his desire for the establishment of the East African Federation, reiterating his belief that the East African Federation could benefit the region politically and economically. The 19th Ordinary Summit of the East African Community Heads of State Summit was held on March 29, 2022. The heads of state of the summit unanimously decided to admit the Democratic Republic of the Congo into the EAC. The DRC officially joined the EAC on July 11, 2022, after officially gaining membership on April 8, 2022. Challenges: ethnic and linguistic differences. Despite Swahili being the group of countries' official language, there is a wide variety of ethno-linguistic expressions within these nations. Within the nations themselves, various regional dialects and entirely different languages are spoken, joining together even more so when compared to one another. According to one study, Tanzania ranked first out of 81 countries with an ethno-linguistic score of 0.93 out of 1. It will be challenging to integrate a region with so many regional dialects, which might prevent some of the EC's economic advantages. Members' existing governments. The degree to which democracy has been adopted in these nations also varies greatly. With Paul Kagame having been the country's president for the past 22 years and winning his third term with nearly 99% of the vote, Rwanda has effectively closed elections. In contrast, multi-party elections are held in other members' countries like Kenya, where there is less significant election corruption. The unilateral lack of free governance across the 7 nations is an even bigger worry for this union. Kenya and Tanzania have the highest freedom scores of the 7 countries according to the Freedom House metric system, but they are still only considered to be partially free. All states have media censorship, voting rights restrictions, ballot fraud, and other forms of voter repression. Merging countries with such anti-democratic and corrupt institutions could create a humanitarian crisis for the people who might lose their freedoms and make cooperation between the various governing powers more challenging. According to a Tanzanian survey, 38% of participants thought that the union of EAC would worsen political corruption, while only 33% thought it would lessen it. Economic challenges. Even though it is understood that the union of these countries is economically beneficial, some countries that want to join the EAC have encountered difficulties because of the logistics of adhering to the EC's standards. The economic well-being of the countries applying to join this organization varies greatly, with Burundi having the lowest GDP at around $3 billion, or roughly $98 billion less than Kenya. The less wealthy countries have been unable to meet some of the EAC standards because of this wealth gap. For instance, South Sudan joined the EAC 4 years after applying, but has yet to meet many of the requirements established for the community. The president of South Sudan has requested assistance from other EAC members in order to meet these requirements, blaming a lack of personnel at customs, immigration, and revenue/tax collection as the primary cause of the country's failure to do so. In spite of the fact that EAC countries are supposed to be exempt from paying visa fees because they are a part of the customs union, member states like Kenya and Uganda continue to charge South Sudanese citizens. To end this video, if you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comments section below, and also like and subscribe for more videos like this.